Hello and welcome to Section 5, Debugging and Troubleshooting. So as the name suggests, in this particular section, we're going to talk about how to troubleshoot and debug your application. The first one that you should know about is how to add, disable, and delete the breakpoints. Just like any other IDE, Xcode allows you to add, delete, disable, as well as delete the breakpoints as per your requirements. So in any debugging workflow, we have a number of steps. Let's divide it into three simple steps. The first step is to discover and locate the problem. The second is to inspect and find the cause to be able to fix it. And the third and final step is to confirm that your fix was indeed successful. And most of these steps require you to debug the application. Before we start with the actual debugging, let's get familiar with the debugging areas in Xcode. We need to understand how to use the following areas: the Debug Navigator, the Breakpoint Navigator, the Debug Bar, Variables View, and Console. Now, in some of the programming languages, you might have to constantly log your messages and variable values into console, but that's not the case in Xcode. As you can see right over here, we have multiple options right here in Xcode. I've put a breakpoint on line number 19, which is in fact highlighted when the control moves to this particular line, and it also highlights the thread with the green color. And on the left hand side, in the Debug Navigator, you can see that the thread 1 is actually on view controller's viewDidLoad function. You can also check the stack trace to understand that it is coming from UI application's main function. On the bottom side of this view, you can see there are two sections: Variables View and Console. To be able to add or remove breakpoints, you must be familiar with the Breakpoint Navigator. You can also enable or disable a single breakpoint or all of them altogether. You can check the Breakpoint Navigator to get a list of all your breakpoints added into your application. Let's have a look in Xcode. In the application that we have been working on, let's try and add some breakpoints. Let's start with the getQuex function in viewDidLoad on line 38. Now that we have added a breakpoint, let's run the application in Simulator. Once the application loads and loads the first view, you will notice that it automatically brings you to Xcode on line 38, highlighting it with color based on your Xcode preferences. This preference can be changed using the themes in the preferences, like fonts and colors. Now that we are at this line, let's have a look at all the navigators that we were talking about and the debugging areas. So the two most important navigators are on the left hand side: the Debug Navigator, where you can see the CPU percentage, the memory, the disk, the network, as well as the current stack trace. It is very helpful to check the stack trace in a complex application to know the actual source of the bug. The next navigator is called the Breakpoint Navigator, as if you right click on the application name or the project, you can see you have an option to disable the breakpoints or share breakpoints, delete the breakpoints, or move the breakpoints. If you expand the file, you can check the breakpoint and try to disable it by clicking it or using the right click option. Of course, you can do that here as well. If you want to disable all the breakpoints in your application, simply click this button in the debug bar to deactivate the breakpoint and run the application by using Continue Program Execution button. As you can see, the application continued just like it was supposed to do. Let's have a look at other options in the debug bar. Also note that if the debugging areas are not available, you can use the first option in the debug bar right over here to show the debug area. On the left hand side is a variables view. Let's have a look at another scenario when we try to tap the get button. We tap the button and we are again into line 60 and stopped over here. In the variables view, you can see an instance of self and geocoder, which are the variables in current scope. The variable views shows you the instance value of variables as well as constants depending on what you are using. As you can see, in the geocoder, you can right click and print the description because it is still uninitialized. That is the value being printed. If you print the description of self, you will notice that self is a view controller. You can also print the value by clicking this button at the bottom, I, which actually gives you the same description. Now the view controller itself is not actually giving us a good description. So we can use the triangle option over here to expand it and look into its properties. Let's try and print the header label. It will print all the values inside the label along with its properties, the frame, text, opacity, auto resize, etc. If you want to print something else, you can also expand it further. On top of this, we will learn more methods to use the console on the right hand side. If the console is not visible, you can make it visible by using this option on the bottom right, which is to hide or show the console. The same applies to the variables view on the left section. So now that you're familiar with the debug bar and the debugging area,